right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the what is usually scheduled for the monthly NASEO Energy Security Committee call. Today, we're taking a slightly different approach, and we're having our friends and colleagues from the Department of Energy's CESER office provide an overview of the State Energy Security Plan and Governor's Certification Letter submission process. A couple housekeeping items before we get started. This is a states and territory energy office only event. So if you are not a state or territory energy office, we kindly ask that you drop from this call. For those that might not be able to attend the entire meeting, we will be recording this and we will be distributing slides again to the state and territory energy offices. Lastly, before I pass it over to David Terry, just wanted to note that we are effectively on standby for everyone if you need any additional TA or have any questions. This is not a standalone event. As Megan will attest to, we are making ourselves radically available. So if you can't attend any office hours that we have scheduled, please feel free to reach out and we will adjust our schedules accordingly to make sure that we can help you out. So with that, I will pause and pass it over to David Terry, NASEO's president, for a few opening remarks. David?
Thanks, Campbell. Thanks, everybody, for joining today. A big shout out to our colleagues at CESER, Megan, Juan, Grant, others, and PNNL. And certainly Campbell and Sarah and the whole security committee team. I think just to reinforce something Campbell said, from a NASEO perspective, helping you get across the finish line, all of you across the finish line, 100% is our top priority, period. Anything we can do, ask, we will do it, anything that we possibly can. So please know that that is our goal, and any questions you have, any help you need, please let us know. And just a big thank you again to the CESER and PNNL teams as well for everything that they have done, and for many of the states that have shared.
I have to look for my login. I got it.
There we go. Many of you have helped one another, and that is important. And many of the people on the call have filled that role. We know we've had some of these issues we've discussed before that we'll hear today, but many of them are confusing. I know I get confused without my Cliff Notes, and I also get confused enough that I have to check in with Campbell and Sarah and Megan and others. So we're going to cover a few things today. Certainly the timeline and schedule. Megan will help us with that, and others. The submission process that is envisioned that we need to follow. And certainly the governor's certification letter. And, you know, there are no remedial questions here. All of us need a brush up, and that's why we thought it was important to do this. And also, in case there were any changes since you last checked in on the timeline or were able to. So again, just appreciate everybody working together. If you feel unsure about something you've heard, please drop a question in the chat, follow up later, whatever you prefer. But appreciate you doing that, and appreciate you taking time out of your schedules today to do this important work with us. With that, I think I want to turn it back to Campbell. I'm not sure if Campbell is next or Megan, but appreciate you joining again today, and appreciate the time you're taking to get these plans where they need to be. Thank you.
Thanks, David. And I will immediately pass it over to Megan and get the slides up.
All right, thank you so much. And thank you, David, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to do this introduction. I want to echo all of those thoughts. This work is so important. It can't be done in a vacuum. It's so great to see so many of you reaching out to each other, asking questions, we're always trying to improve. So as David said, this is a no-fault environment. Any question is a valid question to ask. And we all want to make ourselves radically available. This should not be any kind of game of gotcha. We've got the rubric webinar. We've got the rubric we'll send to you. I think, in my opinion, the state energy security plans are just so important. It doesn't matter what DOE thinks. It matters how well the plan works for you and for your state. Unfortunately, we're in this world where DOE has to do these reviews, and the good thing is that it's giving us this opportunity to work with NASEO and PNNL really closely to hopefully provide some things that are useful, that you can say, hey, I'm bringing some actionable energy security knowledge back to my state and putting it to work. So we can go to the next slide, please, Campbell. And thank you for sharing the slides. I've got some bandwidth issues here today, although I have a lot of things closed. But here's a brief agenda. We'll just go over when we submit, what the requirements are, resources that we have for you. And then we'll talk through the review process. It's going to be exactly the same as last year, spoiler alert. But just to reiterate that, because I think we really want to meet you guys where you are and talk about the plans as they are, and just ensure that the Congress and especially our DOE colleagues who are going through this risk assessment of energy infrastructure, that they know how much great hard work the plans have, that you have done on the plans, and that honestly it's teaching us a lot from the DOE perspective. And we'll have lots of time at the end for input and questions. If we can go on to the next slide. This is my favorite slide. Just kidding. But I get to show it a lot. This is the thank you Congress for codifying the state energy security plans in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, otherwise commonly known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. I think it is a pretty big deal, though, that we got this definition codified. And technically right now, unless a piece of pending legislation passes, it will sunset October 31st, 2025. However, what's important about it is just how this sort of big job here. This state energy security plan's purpose is to secure the energy infrastructure of the state against all physical and cybersecurity threats and ensure that the state has reliable, secure, and resilient infrastructure. And a single plan can mitigate the risk of energy supply disruptions to the state and enhance response and recovery. So it's a big lift. I just want to acknowledge that right off the bat. There is nothing in this definition that says, oh, just do this in your spare time, right? So I hope that's another outcome of all of this work that you've put in on these plans, that our directors and our governors see that we should have dedicated energy security personnel working on this to address all potential hazards to each energy sector or system. It's a bit of an identification problem. It's an issue, and provide a risk assessment of that. That's including, as you all know, anyone who's been looked at our guides and been in our risk assessment cohorts, you're not just thinking about hazards, you're thinking about hazards, vulnerabilities, and consequences, and adding all of that up. So I really like this definition. I think it is a hefty load to carry. Well, we'll go on quickly to the timeline here, because part of the statute on the next slide, part of the statute that we're not showing you says by September 30th of each year, governors must submit to the secretary an energy security plan, which contains all of those elements that I showed you on the last. It fully addresses all of those elements I showed you on the last slide. So we know after the 2023 review period, 30 states received a letter from DOE indicating that they needed to do work on a few more elements. Now, those of you who have those letters, I'll just go over very quickly. The top part of the letter is what we consider your guidance to fully address each element. The bottom part of the letter is optional guidance, because we wanted to read your entire plan. I'll go into this a little more later, but and yes, we will send these slides out after the call. Absolutely. So we really wanted to make sure that, while you're working on the plan and doing all this stuff, you also have some optional ideas for enhancement. They may or may not be what you want to think about. But we put it in there because we've had quite a few people read the plans and a lot of great feedback. So this year we need 30 states to turn in their plans by September 30th. Once you receive a letter from the DOE before the end of the calendar year 2024 that says you've fully addressed all the elements, then you can submit a governor's certification letter. That is the official position of the DOE General Counsel, that they understood a lot of work needed to be done on these plans, but that they wanted DOE to verify the contents prior to the governor certifying the plan. On the next slide, we'll talk about what that governor's certification letter looks like for those of you on the line who, oops, sorry, one back. Yep, there we go. These little green bobbles. So 26 states, sorry, we're back. 26 states received a letter from DOE indicating that they did fully address all of the elements. And those of you who received those letters know you also got a lot of optional comments, because, it's a continuous improvement cycle. We're always working to make these plans better. And so you have the awesome opportunity this year, and we've already received one certification letter, so it's pretty exciting that a governor's gotten to see this incredible work that you're doing, and it's been raised to that level. So yeah, we'll stay here on the green slide for just right now. So we're asking you to have the governor, the law says the governor certifies the plan. So we do have some guidance, and that's linked on one of the next slides that just gives you some language you can use. I think also rely on your committee members for that too. I know that we've had some other discussions of, what does that briefing deck look like for the governor? What are things that you want to highlight? We've put some ideas into the templates that are online, but those are all optional. This is your opportunity to elevate the amazing work that you do and have done in this plan. So we'll need, from these 26 states, we need a governor's certification letter or a plan. We'll talk about that more. The law actually gives you a couple of options. By September 30th, 2024, and then again, September 30th, 2025, assuming that the law sunsets as it is now currently scheduled to sunset. On the next slide, talk a little bit about resources. You guys know that I came to DOE 2 years ago, kind of after the first submission of these plans, and that didn't go how DOE wanted it to go. So CESER worked with NASEO, got a lot of feedback, feedback from you all, very candid feedback, and we tried to do better. We tried to get some resources out, obviously not as quickly as we should have. I wish the Risk Assessment Essentials Guidebook had gotten out about 6 months sooner, but it is what it is. And the Risk Mitigation Approach Guide, it will be out this week, which I realize is not ideal timing, but we've got a ton of that content in our cohorts and in our material from our in-person meetings. So if you're still working on your mitigation section, please, please, please reach out. And that guide should be published, like I said, by the end of the week. We also took some time and went back through the State Energy Security Plan guidance that had originally been drafted in 2022. And we worked with our team at the Pacific Northwest National Lab, in particular, because I'd read so many plans, and they were like, people are trying to follow this guidance, but it's one person's interpretation, right? And there are a lot of ways to write these plans and a lot of ways to change a legacy plan. We've got a lot of our plans that are very energy emergency focused. They're great plans. Now, to incorporate the new elements, we sort of revamped that guidance, and we also revamped the energy profile guidance in 2024. Because the original guidance had a lot of great information for a single year, but from doing this work and from what the DOE situational awareness team does, we look at least 5 to 10 and maybe even 20 years worth of trends when we're trying to understand that the energy profile is the foundation of your entire document. Your risk assessment really starts there, right? From just looking at the way your energy infrastructure is set up, how you use energy, who uses what, you can already start to see vulnerabilities. You can already start to see places where you could potentially, a threat may be more impactful. So on the next slide, I've got just a couple more resources. Many of you are in our cohorts. You've been coming to office hours. Thank you so much. It's great to talk to you. Please, please, reiterating what Campbell said at the outset, we have weekly office hours on Wednesdays. On every other Friday, we've been doing a specific element. Now we're just leaving Fridays open till the end of the year. Happy to have a meeting whenever it works for you. Let's make sure that your drafts, we're accepting drafts. Please send me a draft if you'd like to know, hey, is this going to fully address this element? That's what we're here for. We're giving you verbal feedback from the drafts because we're getting really close to the review timeline, and I don't want to make our friends do too much work, but NASEO and PNL and DOE are all working really, really closely on this. So if you're more comfortable reaching out to NASEO, I totally understand. They've got the rubric. They're working closely with the review team. We will make sure you get the answers that you're looking for. We kicked off the Island, Territorial, and Alaska cohort back in October. I think we'll try to keep that going just as long as we can. It's such a great group. It's slated to end in December, but I think that's just an opportunity for us to retool, to reinvigorate, to understand. So all of these cohorts can continue or can end. That's really up to the states, and we'll be reaching out. We launched our cyber and physical security working group with a cyber and physical game at the June 12th meeting, in-person meeting. But we are looking for other ways to leverage the EISAC physical security events and bring maybe some different flavor to that cyber and physical security work. We know a lot of the cyber sections and plans are kind of compromised of the drop-in, but that there are a lot of interesting stories out there about how we're, as energy offices, taking in threat information and sending it out and coordinating and collaborating. That is cybersecurity too. I work for an agency that has cybersecurity in the name, right? And I don't have a security clearance, but I get the announcements. I understand what frosty goop is. So there's a lot you can do when you're not a hands-on keyboard cybersecurity professional. I think, energy offices are well positioned to be at the table, to be helping the ONG sector in particular, and to be just educating across their states. And I think that's what you guys are already doing. And I can't wait to kind of collect those good stories. And also tribal coordination. We'd hope to launch that this summer. We're really focused on making sure that everyone gets across that finish line this year because of the GC determination that if you don't fully address all of the elements by September 30th, 2024, they are recommending holding back FY25 funds, which would be your state energy program formula funds. And that's not anything that anybody wants to do. I'll echo David on that. That is a top priority to just keep us away from all of those discussions. There's in no way should that happen. So that's why we want to, we're reaching out to you today. You're probably getting emails from my friends Sarah Trent and Campbell saying, hey, can we just see a draft? Can we make sure you're working on this? Because it is that important. Your state energy program formula funding. I know the energy office I came from, it was our only source of funding. And it makes such an impact in your states. It should not be held back just because of, not fully addressing an element when we can help you do that. So on the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about the review process and principles. First principles, then process. And this all came based on your feedback. After the first review came out in February of 2023, after you had submitted the plans in September of 2022, we heard loud and clear that that was not an acceptable timeline, that the comments were not very helpful, and we wanted to try to do better. So we sat down and worked with, took proposals from a couple of labs, and I really liked what our friends at Pacific Northwest National Lab said. First of all, they have a lot of people who've worked at the state level, and I think that's really helpful. A little bit biased over here as a former state employee myself, but, also some of these things just make sense, right? Consistency, collaboration, transparency. So, and we do conduct the reviews very in close coordination. So if there are two reviewers reading each plan and a lead reviewer then reading the plan and synthesizing the comments, if there is a situation in which the reviewers do not agree, then that comes to me and I work with my colleagues and we arbitrate the situation. And that's just where the buck stops. So, and we really wanted to give you actionable feedback that's tailored to each state or territory. You'd probably not be surprised to learn that if we had comments in the can, it'd be a lot easier to get them out the door if everybody just got the same comment with the same language. But that wouldn't be fair because these plans are individual. They are not, we joke, when you've read one plan, you've read one plan, right? But that's why they're so informative and useful. So, and then we really wanted to get you the feedback as quickly as possible. So last year we got it out by December 18th. And with all the holidays that happened between September 30th and the end of the year, I think that was good. We will try to meet that same timeline. 30 reviews is fewer than 56, but we still have a process where we're reading your entire plan, because sometimes there are things about consequences and vulnerabilities and risks sort of peppered through. And Although I always encourage folks, make it easy for their reviewers, have a distinct risk assessment section, have a distinct risk mitigation section. That's not always the case. And that's why we read the entire plan to really try to understand where you're coming from. So you'll submit the plans Monday, September 30th. It's not on a Saturday. I don't have to sit at home and watch the inbox. And unfortunately, it's during the NASEO annual meeting. So if you want to submit early, that's fine. And reviews will begin October 1st, 2024. So we're going to get right on it. And then the next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about the approach. Again, consistency, transparency, collaboration, and each reviewer, just to know a little bit more about the review team, which I think was part of why we didn't understand the feedback as well from the 2022 review. Each of these reviewers has energy security knowledge, reads the whole plan, and they're getting the same consistent guidance. Last year, I did several sort of webinars with the review team, just walking them through. We reviewed 3 plans early just to talk about how to calibrate that review. Everybody's different, but that means we're trying to give you the comments you need, not the same thing. And we want to make those comments actionable. That's really something that I think is important in the plans themselves, because they can get very unwieldy and have a lot of background information that's not stored anywhere else, but they should still have an actionable component, And with the opportunity to have these risk assessments and risk mitigation sections, that leads you to thinking about action. How can I mitigate some of these big risks? So, and I'm seeing a question from Eddie in the chat. Does that mean states who submit plans on September 30th will not receive SEP annual funds until the reviews are completed? Eddie, we can take that offline, but I don't believe that's the case. There's nothing in place to do that right at this moment. So I believe FY24 funds just kind of went out from SCEP, but I'd be happy to follow up with you on that. So I think we have a little time on the FY25 funds, but no one is advocating for sort of pre-holding funds back. That we're trying to do all the upfront work so that I can tell my bosses, nope, every state's making it. They're working hard. On this next slide shows you the process. I already said this, but 2 assigned core reviewers, both with energy security knowledge, independently read the plan and then grade. We revised the rubric from 2022. This is the same rubric we used in 2023, and that you can request a copy of from Campbell or Sarah or me. But we're going to maintain the same thresholds. And we said this a lot in 2023, but we will not go back and re-adjudicate elements that if we said you already addressed it, you've already addressed it. You can add, that's great to go ahead and add optional, enhancements. And we still have our progress form on the website. So, you can use that. You can tell us about the cool stuff you've done. Okay, thank you, Greg. So your 2024 funds are just now coming out, and you're going to resubmit on September 30th. Yep. So my GC determination, which I have in writing, says it's FY25 funds that are impacted. So thank you, Greg. I appreciate that. And your letters have that in some of the gobbledygook in the cover letter. We have to do all the legal things. The GC makes us write those letters that way. But this is why it takes time. I guess the real point of this slide is to say that we care about the plans, and this is why I can't promise you that we'll have that feedback back to you within 2 weeks, because there have to be these meetings and calibration and discussion. And you put a lot of thought and work into the plan. So if we're charged with doing the review, we want to do it properly. And it's really helped shape a lot of the technical assistance that we have put forward for you. So, and then we have the recommendation letter, letter process too. That's not short, because we have to read each one. We have to read the comments, and even so, words can get through, or you're like, what did I mean by that? Or what did that mean? So we're doing the best we can is what I'm trying to say. And a big shout out to the PNNL review team. They have been incredible. And and really were able to, when I wasn't planning it, but realized after talking to them and talking through all these plans that, boy, it really would make sense for them to do, help us with the cohorts and do this technical assistance. And I think that's worked out really, really well. If any of you were at the in-person meeting that we attached, thank you, NASEO, that we were able to attach to the NASEO bootcamp. It was a really great meeting, and the work, I'm still working in the workbook and having fun. So definitely check out those materials on the SharePoint. If you're not signed up for the cohorts, you still can. That's a rolling enrollment period. Just reach out to my friend Irina Nedick. On the next slide, here's what we need from 30 of you. Submit a plan by September 30th, 2024. There is that progress form available on the website, so you have an option to add any comments or areas of interest for technical assistance in 2025. Cover letters are not required, and for the 30 of you who and these plan pictures are just on here as examples because I like the covers, not because, not to call out any particular plan. But we do need the plans to fully address all 6 elements. We cannot accept a governor's certification letter in lieu of a plan from the 30 of you who have not received that letter from DOE yet. Once we concur that you have fully addressed each element, then the governor's letter can be submitted in lieu of the plan. So feel free to use the progress form. That's a great way to communicate, but I'll just say that we have to take a different approach this year. Last year, we were allowing meaningful progress on the plans. And this year, we'd like to see you fully address all the elements. It does not have to be a final or public document. It could be a draft. You can still send us a draft. It's really about the content from our perspective. You may have other internal state controls, and I respect that. So hopefully that's clear. I would also, on the next slide, just like to talk about how to submit the plan. So last year, we started this, and it's the same this year. Other than we're trying to get you to contact Irina, who is on the call. Thank you, Irina, by September 23rd to request access to our secure SharePoint site where you can upload the plan. Why by September 23rd? I'll tell you why. Because it can take 24 hours. We're all using SharePoint, in our offices these days, or if we're not, we might have to go through some hoops. We might have to do some, troubleshooting. So we really, 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 if you want to use the SharePoint site, that's fine. That's great. Please contact Irina before September 23rd. If you had access last year, just please reach out to Irina, because we disabled the site, and we can turn that back on, but we don't, because there's turnover and because we just want to make sure that we get the right people each year. We'll ask you to give us a point of contact. Another reason I do like that energy security progress form, and maybe Juan or Grant can put a link to it in the chat along with all of our SESP resources, is that it asks us who should get the letter, right? We ask you that. We say, hey, who do you want to get the letter? So that's really helpful to have those contact names and emails. So you can also send us an encrypted file of your state energy security plan. We had a lot of those emails last year. That's great. Send it to energysecurityplans@hq.doe.gov. That is our receptacle, or you can just send your plan. A lot of the plans aren't necessarily confidential or don't contain confidential information. You can email it to energysecurityplans@hq.doe.gov. I will be Grant and I will be manning that, and Juan probably too, that email box all day on Monday the 30th, and we will acknowledge your submission. You are welcome to submit the plan early, but reviews will not start until October 1st. So just to be clear on that. Also, if you want to submit a draft, just email me directly or email Campbell or Sarah and let us know it's a draft, that you're not submitting, the final plan. I want to stop right there. Are there any questions on this with the group before I get deeper into the governor's certification letter? Okay, hearing none. We'll go on to the next slide of the governor's certification. You know, it really, thank you, Johanna, and thank you, Julie. Honestly, PDFs are usually just smaller, so that's totally fine. However you want to submit it, whatever, you know, whatever format you like, we'll read it no matter what. So just to go over, 26 states have the option to submit a governor's certification letter in lieu of a plan. We're going to get into what the other options are. And then 30, we still need to look at your plan one more time, and just note that you've fully addressed everything. And as of now, this provision sunsets October 31st, 2025. On the next slide, we'll take a look at some legal language, my favorite thing. So here in section E of 40108, says a state is not eligible to receive federal financial assistance under this part, and that's how we know it's the State Energy Program Formula Funds, because it's authorized by this part of the Energy Policy Conservation Act, unless the governor of the state submits to the secretary with respect to that fiscal year a state energy security plan that meets the requirements, so that fully addresses the elements, is how we've been talking about it, or after an annual review carried out by the governor, the letter can say one of two things. If the governor says that, and here's how we're interpreting it, if there were any necessary revisions, that would mean if there were any revisions that the governor said, I don't think you're fully addressing these elements, you've got to do more in order, you know, I need necessary revisions to the way you're addressing the elements or the requirements of the statute. Or the easier route is if the governor gets the briefing on the plan, loves the plan because it's a great plan, and says there are no revisions to the state energy security plan necessary at this time. And that certification of no revisions also includes things like your regular updates, right? That's not a necessary revision. If you're just, you know, changing out names of the people who you coordinate with, or an office got moved or changed its name or something like that, just normal updates to the energy profile are not considered necessary revisions. So we're going to talk about that more on this next slide too. So that's, just know that this is where this is the part of the law, and we can go to the next slide, that we're really trying to help you understand what DOE's expectations are here. And by DOE, I mean the lawyers. So the 26 states that fully addressed all the elements have this option to submit a letter, but you also can submit a plan, right? So via email to energysecurityplans@hq.doe.gov, the secretary has allowed CESER to collect the plans. And we do, and this is what our guidance looks like that Juan dropped in the chat, right? So we're asking you to describe a little bit of the review process and then detail a little bit about the review findings. So what did the governor say? Does, you know, and we gave you some, in this file, we give you some language. The governor might say, hey, make sure this aligns with all the hazards in the hazard mitigation plan, or are you coordinating with the fusion center, or you know, DOT, whatever. So you can give us a little bit of a flavor of the review process and findings. That's super helpful. On the next slide, we talk about the no revisions necessary letter. So again, these are both online. I'm sorry that that's a little bit stretched. But basically, we're just, you know, the letter should be in the governor's voice. We assume that you'll be drafting this for them, as I would draft anything from the secretary and her comms people, right? I mean, and then include this line at the end. Like, none of this is prescriptive, but it's helpful to include, I certify my approval and determination that no updates are necessary. That is really straightforward and helpful for us to have in the letter. So in here we say, you know, you can concur with the DOE review, the governor can concur, the governor can have their own opinion. On the next slide, we talk about the necessary revisions. So if there, for some reason, are necessary revisions that have been unearthed by this review, we're kind of assuming that you got those done before you sent the letter. And so we're just asking you, hey, describe what those necessary revisions were. Like after a thorough review is determined that the state energy security plan needed to be updated to add wildfire risk so section 3, hazards, threats, and vulnerabilities, as well as section 4, energy risk assessment, were updated to match the newly approved state hazard mitigation plan. You know, something as simple as that. Describe what was identified and then how you fixed it, and have the governor certify that with the necessary revisions, the plan continues to meet all the requirements of the Energy Policy Conservation Act, Section 366C. So to recap, 26 states have 3 options. You can send in a plan that fully addresses all the elements as you already have, or you can send in a governor's certification letter. All 3 are acceptable. You can let us know if you made optional enhancements to the plan. We're not going to review your plan first. So if you want us to review it, we can, but that will be later, because the 30 states, you know, who are waiting for this determination, and per some of the comments in the chat, and because there's money on the line, that's really we need to get those reviews done, be done with this. Happy to, though, go over those enhanced plans if that's your plan to turn them in. So that's really all I have. I think the next slide is just questions. So I'd love to, we don't even have to keep the slides up. We can see faces if you want to, or however you want to do it. But I'm happy to take any questions, hear any concerns. If you want to air some grievances, I'm here for it. Just kidding about the grievances, really, but it's a Festivus reference for fans of Seinfeld. But yeah, you know, I think we have a big opportunity to get these plans in front of our governors. I see Ed still at the beach. Good to see Ed. But yeah, I'm happy to open the floor up if folks have some questions.
I have a question, if you can hear me. This is Elise from California Energy Commission.
Yeah.
Hi there. I am sort of backfilling for our emergency coordinator who's out of town right now. And I just wanted to see if there's any sort of preference in terms of who submits the letter. Does it have to come from the governor's office, like a governor's office email address, or can it come from the state energy office? It doesn't matter.
Oh, good. Yeah, totally doesn't matter. Good question, though, right? We kind of expect the energy office to be the one delivering it to us, but it should be on the governor's letterhead, signed by the governor. And I realize that is a little bit of a scheduling nightmare, I'm sure, but yeah, you know, that's what we're, because I would assume that if I was sending out something on behalf of the secretary, I can't possibly get it from her email address, right? It's probably on behalf of Jennifer Granholm. So
okay,
yeah,
understood. Thank you.
No problem. Chair recognizes Louisiana. Just kidding about the chair.
I was
Just having
hoping
fun.
it does. I know. So in Louisiana, we have a unique situation here, whereas we have a new governor now compared to the previous submission. So under section E2B, or not 2B, that is the question. So I'm thinking it's E2B. Would you agree with that? No? Oh, it's a bad joke.
Yes.
Okay.
It was a terrible joke. Thank you, Maria.
Hey, I kick it old school.
I've noticed.
So yeah, what we're doing is we're going to correct the update the new governor's information within the plan, and then send off the letter, the letter saying that we didn't have any material. Yeah. Okay.
No necessary revisions. Yeah. Your plan already met sufficiency. Yeah. And, you know, and I understand if it's a scheduling nightmare and you can't get the governor to sign off on a letter before September 30th, you can always resubmit the plan.
True.
You know, we love to have the governors know all the great work you do. However, some things are impractical, and the main point is you've addressed the statutory requirements. That's the important part from where
Okay.
I'm standing.
That sounds good. I mean, that gives us a nice option, us being one of the 26 who have completed it, a nice option in case we are not able to get that letter, that we can just resubmit.
Yeah, and to Barbara's point, Governor Walz is very busy right now. Yeah, that guy's everywhere. So that might be tough. Although and again, does the governor actually sign the letter in pen? Is it yeah? And that's why. So lawyers and others at DOE helped us. Well, really, it's how the law is interpreted is all general counsel, right? So everything in this governor's certification letter guidance is really how the lawyers think about this. And so I tried to equate, DOE with an energy office. I said, listen, if I've got to have the secretary sign off on something, first of all, she's not reading it, I'm presenting points that I want her to know. And then I'm writing that certification letter, and one of her assistants is putting an electronic signature on it, right? So this whole idea of describing the review process, or, I think these are good things, especially if we can learn from it. Like, what really worked with the governor? I'd love to debrief on that, because I think understanding more effective ways that we can elevate energy security in state government that's huge, right? But detailing the review finding, a lot of this is just like, don't kill yourselves on this stuff. It's a big deal to get it in front of your governors. And you got a couple of swings at it. And if this new Secure Grid Act passes, who knows? Maybe in perpetuity. But I think DOE would, well, I don't know what DOE would do. Far be it from me to suggest. Julie Stavelin from Michigan, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing, Megan?
Good to see you.
Just quick question. Once we submit our letter, what kind of verification do we get back that it was received and we're good to go? And is it 2 separate notifications?
It's going to be a really formal email from me, like, got it, thank you, on Monday, or one of us, but probably coming from Energy Security Plans at HQ, and we'll say received, and we'll put it in our files. But we'll also let your state energy program project officers know. That's something I kind of forgot to put in this presentation, but I've been briefing them monthly since we took over this process, just so that they know there's no issues. They have the list of the 26 states who have already, fully addressed all the elements, like Michigan and Louisiana. And so, they're not worried about you guys, and they're not worried about, they're like, do we need to collect these letters? And I said, no, the GC made a determination that CESER can collect them. And we have a tracker going with SCEP so that we can say, hey, letter, just let them know when folks come in.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. Other questions? Kenny, how's it going in Idaho? Jeez, still a fire out there?
Well, there's not a lack of fire. We'll say it that way. I have a question. I don't anticipate having this issue, but if we get governor's review in a future year after we've addressed all 6 elements, and for whatever reason, the governor says, I don't think that they meet all 6 requirements anymore. We have that letter, but we're talking about FY25 SEP dollars potentially being withheld or paused or whatever happens. Could that impact future years of potentially holding up SEP dollars if the governor in their letter decides, I don't think they meet all the elements?
Well, that's a great question, because I think once the DOE determination comes through this year that you're going to meet all of the requirements, then we stand down on holding back any money. So what I would recommend is maybe taking right away in January, trying to get some time on the governor's calendar, if you would anticipate that, so that you could make those necessary revisions and then take another bite at the apple and say, hey, you're right, we added those things in the risk assessment or whatever, and now it's this. So it's a really good question, but that's why I would try to build in as much time. And I think that's why, right after we got the review out, I think last January, I started to get questions and where's your guidance for the governor's certification letter? And I'm like, so we did finally get that out, hopefully with enough time for people to get that certification and to work through any issues like that. But thanks. That's a good question. See, Max Woods also on fire in Oregon.
Max personally is doing okay, but thanks, Megan.
Good.
We've had a good shift in the weather and it's helping fight our fires. So it's a good news story. I think I know the answer, but I thought other people might be curious about this question. We are creating a GIS database as part of our plan. And it's going to be awesome when it's done. It's not quite done. It will be done by September 30th. And I'm wondering if there's an easy way to share that with CESER, PNNL. If you want, do you want like printed out access and look? It's not, in my mind, it's not really necessary process, particularly with some fuel analysis we've done using GIS.
Max, I think you cut out a little bit during that.
Oh, sorry, Ben. Can you guys hear me?
We can. It just like you were saying, it's not really, and then you said fuel analysis.
Okay. Fuel analysis is necessary. That's necessary. I really just want to make sure that I know, do you want to see a GIS database that we're putting together with some associated maps or have access to that that file as part of our submission?
Always, because that does sound really cool. But I'll say this, that like Hawaii and Puerto Rico, who also have really cool GIS systems, did not give us access to those, and it didn't impact their plans. But I would be happy to talk to you about that offline too. See if there's a way that we could, get at, if there's something that might help us understand the way that you approach something, maybe that would be great to be able to see it.
That's a good idea.
Could take screenshots. But
okay. Why don't we talk in the first part of September when it's more ready, and then we'll figure out a plan. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. That's a great question though, because I love these GIS databases and you guys are doing really cool stuff with them. And, I thought that webinar Hawaii did on it was great. But yeah, to Maria's comment in the chat too, I know Puerto Rico had a lot of concerns, a lot of heartburn about, having those layers out there, and really wanted to, they did a great presentation at the NASEO annual meeting in October on that panel I was lucky enough to be on. But it's when you aggregate information like this, it can get a little, it can be a concern to keep it safe. So I wouldn't want you to compromise your database. Well, if there are no other questions, I can hand it back over to the Energy Security Committee co-chairs, or Campbell or whoever. But
Hi, Megan. I have a question.
Lisa. Yeah, go ahead.
On our state plan, we have a spot for our governor and director to sign. So in addition of that, you do want a certification letter, correct?
That's correct. The law calls this out in this, these two, like, is it necessary revisions or, no necessary revisions. So we do ask to, please use that language. We're negotiating with the GC. I don't think they should have to read every single letter. CESER has been appointed to do this or tapped to do it. So, but that would make my life easier if you could send us a separate certification letter.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's been a blast working with all of you on these plans. This is not technically what I came to DOE to do, but happy to do it. Ben, did you have something?
I did, of course, and that is, I want to just remind everyone that if you do submit with the governor, I'm still correct, and then if you do submit with the governor's certification letter this year, you'll have to do it again next year. So, like, if we submitted this year, having met all the elements without the certification, then we could even do that really in a draft form that's finished, really like a near final draft without signatures or something. And then next year submit the final version with the governor's certification letter. That's probably what Tennessee's probably going to do.
Yeah, and that's totally fine. You know, your plan fully addressed all the elements, but you still wanted to make changes and do stuff, which is great. I mean, that's what these plans are about. So you shouldn't feel obligated to have a governor's, whole governor's process, especially if you're still working on a plan. You've got September 30th, 2025 too. But the main point is just getting that letter from DOE. It means, hey, no one has to worry about do a lot of extra paperwork to hold up money or whatever. And you get to, put your best foot forward with the governor too. Because I think governors are going to be pretty impressed by this work. Or whoever from the governor's office you can get to look at it. But, and I will put the call out that hopefully we can have thank you, Johanna. I hope we can have like a debrief session, maybe before the end of the year, where we're just like, how did that go with, for those other 30 states who are all going to go take their plans to their governors in 2025, maybe some lessons learned from some of you who are doing it this year, and how that process has worked. Or, I was working on some like PowerPoint guidance that I haven't finished, because I really would love input from you all on that. Like how can we help each other, elevate the work and make sure the governor doesn't go, let's change this real quick, because these plans are not easy to change real fast. But Lisa, did you have something? Or maybe just a Zoom?
No, me and I hit the button. Sorry.
It's always something, with these awesome ways that we can talk from all across the country. But yeah, thank you all for coming. I hope that this was helpful. Campbell and Sarah have the slides. They'll be sending them out. I saw a couple of requests for the rubric in my email. We'll be getting that out to you. And yeah, just thanks again for all of your hard work. And please reach out. Let's get these bad boys done and in the hopper, and so I can work on some other interesting things that I really came to DOE to do with this group. But we'll get it done. Campbell, back to you.
Thanks, Megan. Very comprehensive, very helpful. Well, we do have 5 minutes left, so happy to hang around if anybody has non-submission questions or wants to chat generally with the rest of the committee, but also happy to be respectful of everyone's time and call it for the day. So Sarah and I at least will stick around. Others are welcome to stick around, but if not, we appreciate your attendance. Please follow up with any questions. And as always, we are here for you, especially through these next 7 weeks. So feel free to call, email, whatever.